When Elvis Presley passed away in August 1977, the world thought every secret had been buried with him. But decades later, deep inside Graceland's basement vault, an archivist found something no one expected. A sealed white envelope marked in faded blue ink. For Lisa, open when you're ready. What was inside didn't just rewrite his story. It revealed the part of Elvis the world was never meant to see. August 29, 1977. Graceland was quiet for the first time in weeks. The front gates, once flooded by fans, now stood under a soft drizzle. Inside, every clock still ticked on Memphis time, the same hour the King's heart had stopped. Charlie Hodge, Elvis's longtime friend and stage guitarist, sat in the basement office with 2 estate staff members and a locksmith from Union Avenue. They were cataloging everything: gold records, rings, tapes, the things no one else would ever touch again. And then they saw it. A gray steel safe, waist-high, tucked behind a cabinet of old tour ledgers. On the front, hand-painted in gold, EP. No key, no code, no instructions. Charlie frowned. "I don't remember this being here," he said quietly. The locksmith, a man named Ray Doyle, ran his fingers across the door. Older model, probably installed back in the Hilton days. They decided to leave it for later. For years, the safe sat there, untouched. Too heavy to move, too sacred to destroy. Dust gathered on the handle like a seal. Even when Graceland opened to the public in 1982, no one mentioned it in the tours. It was as if it didn't exist. But in 1993, during a quiet renovation of the archive room, a young archivist named Maria Lopez stumbled upon an old index card taped inside a ledger drawer. It read, in Elvis's looping handwriting, "Safe, basement office. Keep private." Maria froze. The handwriting matched confirmed notes from the Jungle Room sessions. She took the card to the head curator, who looked at her and simply said, "Don't tell anyone yet." That night, after everyone left, Maria returned with Ray Doyle, the same locksmith, now retired but still living nearby. His hands trembled as he adjusted his tools against the rusted dial. Minutes passed. Then a click. The safe door creaked open with a low metallic groan. Inside, the air smelled of dust, leather, and faint cologne. The same scent from Elvis's dressing room at the Hilton. Maria held her breath. Inside were several objects wrapped in tissue. A pair of aviator sunglasses, a gold cross necklace, a folded scarf, and at the very back, a single white envelope. The wax seal was unbroken, the handwriting unmistakable. Simply said, "For Lisa, open when you're ready." Maria whispered, "Oh my God!" Ray exhaled slowly. "You think it's real?" She nodded. "That's his script. I've seen it in the letters." They placed the envelope gently on the desk. The wax shimmered under the fluorescent light, shaped by a faint thumbprint. The room went silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Ray looked at her. "You gonna open it?" Maria hesitated. "It's not mine to open." He nodded, understanding. "Then what do we do?" She stared at the envelope for a long time, then whispered, "We find someone who deserves to see what's inside." It would be months before that envelope left the archive room. But its discovery changed everything. Because inside that envelope lay not another show contract or a forgotten lyric, but something that would reveal the most human side of Elvis Presley the world had never known. Sometimes the loudest legends hide the quietest truths, and that truth was about to surface. For 3 days, the envelope sat untouched on Maria's desk at Graceland's archive office. She didn't dare move it, didn't dare breathe near it. Every morning she'd unlock the door, switch on the soft yellow light, and there it was, resting under glass, like something alive. She'd seen thousands of Elvis artifacts before, gold records, handwritten lyrics, letters to fans. But this one felt different, personal, sacred. It wasn't meant for history. It was meant for one heart. The wax seal caught the light each time she walked by. A small, uneven stamp, pressed slightly off-center. The kind you'd make if your hands were shaking. On the 4th day, Maria called her supervisor, a man named David Lytle, who'd worked with the Presley estate since the 1980s. He arrived quietly, hat in hand. "You found something?" he asked. She nodded, motioning toward the envelope. He studied it closely through the glass. "That's his handwriting," Maria said softly. "Should we tell the family?" David sighed. "We should, but timing matters. Lisa's been through enough this year." It was 1993. Lisa Marie had just released her debut single, Don't Cry Daddy, remix, and was trying to step out of her father's shadow. The media was relentless. David continued, "We'll log it, photograph it, but nothing more until we get clearance." Maria agreed. But that night she couldn't sleep. The thought of that letter sitting in silence while the world outside still worshipped the myth of Elvis. It didn't feel right. Because inside that envelope wasn't the king. It was a father. One evening, a thunderstorm rolled over Memphis. The lights in the archive flickered. Maria stayed late, guarding the room while rain hammered against the windows. At 9:43 p.m., lightning struck nearby, knocking the power out for several seconds. When it returned, one of the display frames on the wall had fallen, shattering the glass. Maria bent down to clean it, but when she looked back, the envelope had slid slightly across the table from the vibration. The wax seal glistened under the emergency lights. Her heart pounded. The temptation hit her like a whisper. What if it wasn't just a note? What if it was something Elvis wanted someone to find? Her hands trembled. She reached for it, then pulled back. David's words echoed in her head. Timing matters. But then another voice replaced it. A smaller one. Maybe this is the right time. She reached again, fingertips brushing the paper. It was thick, aged, but still firm, the kind of stationery Elvis had used for personal notes in the mid-70s. She turned it gently in her hand. The wax had cracked slightly at one edge. She froze. Then, in one small motion, almost accidental, the seal broke. A quiet pop, like a sigh escaping the past. Maria stared at the broken wax in disbelief. The letter had opened itself. She slid the paper out slowly. Inside was a folded sheet, yellowed but intact. 3 pages, written front and back in blue ink. The first line made her eyes fill with tears. "My sweet girl, if you're reading this, it means Daddy's gone home." Her hands shook. She read the next line out loud, voice trembling. "I don't know if they'll let you see me one last time, so I'm writing instead." Maria sat down, covering her mouth. The letter continued, tender, regretful, painfully human. He wrote about missing birthdays, about the loneliness of hotel rooms, about how he sang louder when he felt empty inside. He ended the first page with a line that felt like a confession. "The crowd gave me applause, but you gave me peace." Maria lowered the page, staring into the dimly lit room. She whispered, "No one should read this before she does." Outside, thunder rolled again. A deep, echoing sound that felt like applause from another world. She carefully folded the letter back, sealed it inside a new envelope, and locked it in a small metal drawer under her desk. That night, she drove home through the rain in silence. Because she knew one thing now. Elvis Presley hadn't just left behind music. He'd left behind a message. A goodbye no microphone ever caught. 2 days later, Maria arrived at work early. The archive still dark except for a faint glow from the hallway. The rain had stopped, but the air in Memphis carried that heavy stillness that comes after a storm. She unlocked her desk drawer and pulled out the letter. The edges had curled slightly overnight. The ink shimmered faintly in blue. Not typewritten, not copied, but real. She whispered, "It's him." For a moment, she forgot she wasn't supposed to read it again. She unfolded the pages and let her eyes trace the words that seemed to breathe between the lines. The second page began differently, slower, as if he'd written it over more than one night. "Lisa, I don't expect you to understand the way fame changes a man. I thought the world's love would fill me up. Instead, it made me hollow." Maria read each sentence like a prayer. "They cheered when I was strong, but they disappeared when I was weak. Don't chase that kind of love, baby girl. It vanishes when the lights go out." Her chest tightened. Every word sounded like a man unmasking himself. Not the king, but a father who'd run out of songs to hide behind. Halfway down the page there was a smudge, a place where the ink had bled. It looked like a teardrop. Below it, another line. I hope I taught you more with my mistakes than my music. Maria set the letter down. She wiped her eyes, angry at herself for breaking the rules, but unable to stop. This wasn't gossip. It wasn't memorabilia. It was humanity. She turned to the third and final page. The handwriting had grown uneven, shakier, like his hand was tiring. If I could give you one gift, Lisa, it would be quiet. Not the lonely kind, but the kind where your soul finally stops running. I only ever felt that peace once, when you sang beside me. Maria covered her mouth. She'd seen the footage of Elvis and Lisa backstage at the Hilton, where the little girl had whispered a few lines of Love Me Tender. It was famous now, but this felt like the missing piece behind it. Then came the final paragraph. They called me a king, but I was just a man who wanted to be a good daddy. If this letter ever reaches you, I hope you don't see it as goodbye. Think of it as me still singing from the other side of the curtain. And finally, the line that silenced her heart. The only crown worth keeping is the one your child gives you. Maria couldn't breathe. She sat back in her chair, staring at the words. They glowed faintly in the low light, as if the paper itself remembered his voice. She thought about Lisa, about the woman the world saw, polished, composed, walking through her father's shadow like it still weighed on her shoulders. How would it feel to read this? To see that the man the world wanted never mattered as much as the father she lost? Maria folded the pages again, gently, as if touching something alive. She placed them back inside the new envelope, pressing along the edges to seal it with her fingers. Then she locked it back in the drawer. When she turned off the light, the room felt different. Like someone else was still there, watching, listening. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was something else. Either way, Maria knew she'd crossed a line that couldn't be undone. The next morning, she called David. We can't keep this secret, she said. Someone needs to know what's inside. There was a pause. Then his voice, low and serious. Are you sure you want to open that door? She glanced at the drawer. Yes, she whispered, because he wanted it opened. And somewhere, beneath the hum of the air vents and the distant sound of the city waking up, the safe downstairs clicked again, softly, as if history itself had just turned a page. By morning, the letter was no longer just a discovery. It was a burden. Maria sat at her desk staring at the locked drawer that held it, the words that could change everything the world believed about Elvis Presley. David arrived early. He looked exhausted. You didn't sleep, did you? She shook her head. I kept hearing his voice. He sighed. Then you understand why we can't make this public. The estate will want control. But it's not a brand, she said softly. It's his heart. He glanced at her, almost pleading. You think they'll let that matter? The image sells. The man doesn't. She looked down, whispering, maybe that's the problem. For hours, they debated quietly behind closed doors. The museum director, the estate lawyers, even a family representative joined the conversation by phone. The question wasn't whether the letter was real. They'd confirmed the handwriting, but what to do with it. If released, it would become tabloid gold. If buried, the truth would stay silent forever. Maria watched the rain start up again outside the small basement window. Do you think he meant for her to find it? She asked. David's answer came slow. I think he meant for her to feel it one day. Not the world. Just her. But she'll never see it if they keep it locked away, Maria whispered. He nodded. Maybe that's the price of protecting the legend. That sentence lingered. Protecting the legend. It sounded colder every time she thought about it. That night, Maria stayed long after everyone left. The building creaked under the weight of another Memphis storm. Somewhere upstairs, a light flickered inside the museum's main hall. She sat at her desk, staring at the envelope again. The words for Lisa seemed to glow faintly under the lamp. She whispered, You wrote this for her, didn't you? Not for the newspapers. Not for the world. For her. Then something inside her shifted. She took out her camera and snapped a photo of each page. Not for fame, not for theft, but for preservation. Because she'd seen too many truths vanish in the name of control. She printed one copy, folded it neatly, and slipped it inside a manila envelope labeled archive copy. Personal. She placed that in her purse, her heart pounding. As she was leaving, David stepped out of the shadows near the hall. "I figured you might try something like this," he said quietly. Maria froze. "You followed me?" He shook his head. "I stayed, because I had the same thought." He looked tired, conflicted, almost ashamed. "If you're going to save a copy, make sure it's for the right reason." "What's the wrong one?" she asked. "Attention," he said. "Elvis never wanted that kind of love." She nodded slowly. "Then maybe this is the right kind, the kind that keeps him human." He studied her for a moment, then turned away. "Just be careful. Secrets this big, they don't stay quiet for long." She watched him leave through the rain. The sound of his footsteps faded down the hallway until there was only silence again. Maria sat down, hands trembling. She stared at the letter one last time before locking it away. For a long moment, she imagined Elvis sitting at his desk decades ago, pen in hand, unsure what to write first. The house quiet, the world asleep, and a father, not a king, whispering to a future he'd never get to see. For Lisa, it wasn't a performance. It was a promise. And that promise was now in her hands. Outside, thunder rolled softly across Memphis. The kind of thunder that feels like a man clearing his throat before saying something the world's waited too long to hear. It started with a whisper. A single post on a small Elvis fan forum in early 1994. Someone calling themselves Blue Moon 75 wrote, "There's a letter Elvis wrote to his daughter they never showed us. No proof, no photo, just that." But within hours, fans flooded the thread with questions, theories, and heartbreak. The post spread like wildfire across fan clubs from Memphis to London. Inside Graceland, panic hit the archive office. Maria froze when David rushed in holding a fax printout. "It's out there," he said, voice shaking. "Someone leaked it." She went pale. "How?" He handed her the sheet. At the bottom was a grainy scan. Just one paragraph of Elvis's handwriting. The one that read, "They cheered when I was strong, but they disappeared when I was weak." Maria's heart dropped. That line wasn't supposed to see daylight. Not yet. Not like this. She whispered, "That's my photo." David looked at her. "Please tell me you didn't." "I didn't send it," she said quickly. "I only made one copy." He rubbed his temples. "Then someone else got to it. Maybe the servers, maybe a contractor, who knows?" By the next morning, every newspaper had it. Elvis's lost letter to Lisa Marie? The tabloids twisted it, claiming the letter revealed secret confessions, scandals, even prophecies. None of it was true. But once the machine started, it couldn't be stopped. Maria sat alone in her car outside Graceland, staring at the headlines through the glass. Her stomach turned. She whispered, "I wanted people to feel his heart, not feed on it." The estate's lawyers launched an internal investigation. Reporters camped at the gates. Radio hosts replayed the leaked line between songs. Fans cried on live calls, saying they'd never imagined Elvis so lonely. But amidst the noise, one person stayed silent. Lisa Marie. For 3 months, she refused interviews. No statements. No comment. Nothing. Until April 1994. A press conference was held in Los Angeles. Cameras flashed as she stepped to the podium. Black suit, steady eyes. The room went still. She said, "The letter is real." You could hear gasps. Then she continued, "It's not a scandal. It's not a confession. It's a father talking to his daughter. That's all." The reporters shouted questions. "When did you find it? Why keep it secret? Did Elvis predict his death?" She held up her hand. "You all loved my daddy for what he gave the world. I loved him for what he gave me. Please let this letter be ours again." Silence. Then applause. Genuine, quiet, human applause. In Memphis, Maria watched the broadcast from her office. Tears rolled down her face. For the first time since the envelope opened, she felt peace. Later that week, Lisa issued a statement through the Presley Foundation. "This letter is proof my father's greatest performance wasn't on stage. It was in the way he loved." The backlash faded. The tabloids moved on. But something had changed in the air. Radio stations began ending their Elvis tribute hours with the quote from that letter. "The only crown worth keeping is the one your child gives you." People repeated it like scripture. It appeared on fan posters, murals, and candlelight tributes. Even schools in Memphis started using the line during Father's Day assemblies. And for the first time in decades, Elvis Presley wasn't remembered just as a king, but as a man who tried to be a better father than his fame allowed. Maria never admitted to her role. She didn't have to, because deep down she knew. If that letter had stayed hidden, it would have died twice. Once with Elvis and again with time. And maybe, just maybe, he never meant for it to stay buried at all. Sometimes the world has to break a rule to keep a promise. That night, Maria sat in her office again, listening to the hum of the air conditioner. On her desk sat a small frame she'd bought at a thrift store. Inside it, she'd printed a single sentence from the letter, the one that still echoed every time she closed her eyes. "When you feel alone, play our song. I'll be there." By the time the storm of headlines faded, the letter was sealed away again, placed inside a temperature-controlled glass case at Graceland's private archive. Only 3 people had ever seen the full contents: Maria, David, and Lisa Marie. But the world didn't know there was something more, a 4th page. It hadn't been scanned, leaked, or mentioned in any press release. The final page had been folded beneath the others, its edge hidden by the crease of the paper. It was discovered almost by accident. In 2005, years after Lisa's statement, Graceland's curatorial team began preparing a Legacy of the King exhibit, a new timeline tracing Elvis's personal side. Maria, older now, was called back as a consultant. When she opened the archival box containing the letter, she noticed the faintest line at the bottom of the last page, like the edge of another fold. Carefully, she slipped a gloved finger beneath it. The paper lifted. Her breath caught. It wasn't a blank page. It was a continuation, written in faded ink, just one small paragraph. The words shakier, the lines uneven. It read, "When you feel alone, play our song. I'll be there. I'll always be there, baby girl." And below that, drawn in the corner, were 3 musical notes, the opening melody of "Love Me Tender." Maria stared at it in silence. For a moment, the room felt smaller, like the air itself leaned in to listen. She whispered, "He finished the song." David, standing beside her, rubbed his eyes. "After all this time," Maria nodded slowly, "he didn't just write her a letter. He left her a duet." They sat there for a long moment, both of them silent. Somewhere outside, the faint hum of tourists echoed through Graceland's halls, voices laughing, footsteps shuffling, unaware that behind one locked door, the truest part of Elvis's story had just been found. When Lisa was told, she didn't want the final line released. "That part's mine," she said quietly. "The world already got their goodbye. This one's just for me." Maria respected that. The team made no copies, took no scans. The page went back into the envelope, sealed again under glass. But Maria kept something else, the feeling of that line, the weight of those words, because even if no one ever read them again, they changed everything. Months later, a PBS documentary about Graceland invited Maria to speak on record. She didn't show the letter. She couldn't. But she said something that caught everyone's attention. People think Elvis was trying to write history. He wasn't. He was trying to write peace. The host asked, "Did he find it?" Maria smiled softly. "I think he did, just too late for the world to notice." After the interview aired, fans began leaving small notes at Graceland's gate with 3 hand-drawn musical notes in the corner, a secret symbol only those who'd heard the story would recognize. Every August 16th, on the anniversary of his passing, the pattern continued. Thousands of tiny envelopes lined the gates, each marked with one message: "Play our song." The staff began collecting them, placing them in a growing box labeled "Letters for Elvis." No one knew what to do with them, but no one dared throw them away. It became a new kind of tribute, quiet, human, uncommercial. Even decades later, the rumor still circulates that if you stand outside Graceland after midnight, when the wind's just right, you can hear the faint hum of Love Me Tender drifting from the upper floor windows. Some say it's just air currents. Others swear it's him, still keeping his promise. Either way, that hidden line became the truest measure of Elvis's legacy. Not the fame, not the fortune, just a father, still singing to his daughter, from somewhere beyond the curtain. When the museum lights dim each night at Graceland, the crowds vanish, and the echoes of camera shutters fade away. But one sound always remains: the soft hum of an air vent that passes over a single glass case at the back of the archive room. Inside it, under controlled light and constant temperature, rests the envelope that changed everything. It's unassuming, small, yellowed, sealed once more with a faint crack through the wax. No spotlight, no plaque. Just a quiet tag beneath it: for Lisa, 1977. Most visitors pass by without noticing. But the ones who pause, who read the small inscription, tend to stay longer than they expect. Something about it stops them. Maybe it's the simplicity. Maybe it's what it represents. Because that letter, never meant for an audience, became one of the most powerful stories in music history. A story that didn't need a stage or a microphone, just a heartbeat and a pen. In 2017, on the 40th anniversary of his passing, Lisa attended a private memorial at Graceland. The archivists cleared the room for her. For the first time in over a decade, the envelope was removed from its case. She stood there for a while, just looking at it. The letter her father wrote when the world wasn't watching. When he was just a man, not a myth. Maria, retired now but invited to attend, watched from the back of the room. She said later in an interview, Lisa didn't cry. She just smiled, like she already knew every word before she read it. After a few moments, Lisa whispered something no microphone caught. But those close enough to hear swore she said, "You kept your promise, Daddy." She placed her hand on the glass and stayed there for a long time. No cameras, no crowd, just stillness, the kind Elvis himself had once written about. Then she quietly stepped back, nodded to the archivists and said, "Let him rest." That was the last time the letter was ever handled. It now stays sealed permanently, untouched, unscanned, untold in full. Because some truths aren't meant to be owned. They're meant to be felt. And maybe that's why the story never really ended. Every August, new visitors bring envelopes to the gates, thousands of them. Each with their own words, drawings, or small notes that say, "For Lisa." It's become a ritual. A quiet conversation between strangers and a ghost who once sang about love, loss, and longing. In the end, Elvis Presley's most lasting song wasn't a hit single. It wasn't even recorded. It was written in ink, sealed with care, and hidden away for decades, waiting for the right time to be heard. He left the world a lesson disguised as a letter, that the truest kind of legacy isn't applause. It's peace. The peace that comes from knowing you loved, and were loved without the spotlight. When visitors finally exit Graceland and step into the soft Memphis night, they pass a small plaque that reads, "The King sang to millions, but his last song was meant for one." And if you listen closely in the quiet after dark, when the wind hums through the magnolia trees, you can almost hear the faintest line from a song that never fades: "Love me tender, love me true." And somewhere beyond the curtain, a father's voice answers back. If the story moved you, share it with someone who still believes music can heal more than hearts. It can heal time. Tell us below, what would you say if you had one last letter to someone you love? Because legends end, but love, when written true, never does.